Ow! My poor head! Please stop! Don't hurt me! I'm not really evil. I'm only doing what my boss tells me.
You mean Detroit?
Yes, he won me in a poker match against the professor. The professor knew it was impossible to beat him, but was too proud to admit it. He can't stand to lose and has a knack of making a bad situation even worse.
Tell me about it. He sent me into this nightmare to rescue his daughter.
His daughter? What do you mean? That's impossible.
It's true. I've seen her with my own eyes.
Listen, you saved my life. In return, I'll give you a ride across the river. It's practically impossible to get across if you can't fly, and if Detroit knows you're coming, it will be heavily protected.
Now you're talking. Let's fly!
So this level is not great. It's not particularly fun or interesting. It is challenging, though. We have to avoid all of these drones flying at us, and if we lose all our health, we plummet to our demise and have to start at the beginning. We also plummet to our demise if we run out of stamina. Luckily, there are stamina pickups, but the thing is that all of the enemies, all of the item placement, everything about this level is random. So it's not as simple as memorizing the patterns and then doing better another time. You just kinda have to guess where the drones are most likely to appear, because you don't have a lot of time to evade them, and swinging your hammer at them is an even more lost cause. It is pretty much just a luck that I didn't lose all of my lives here, but thankfully there was a save point after that boss, so I could have just reloaded. Oh, and in case you might have forgotten, this is the same Crusher robot that we saw in the intro that was flying the Mr. Madness and his goons.
How much further? I'm starting to feel seasick.
Here we go, coming into land. I'm afraid I can only take you this far. Otherwise, I'll be in range for Detroit's radar. He has a remote destruct button, so I can't risk going any further, or I'll end up in the junkyard.
Oh, that's fine, thank you. I just want to get down. I've really had enough.
Sid, I almost forgot. When you next see the professor, ask him about the experiment. He'll know what you mean.
Experiment? What is this? Some sort of riddle?
I really should go now. Good luck. You'll need it.
Well, that makes me feel much better. Thanks. What have I got myself into? Oh, great. Now I'm surrounded by dead dummies.
Welcome to the cemetery, which I think we can say was an unexpected level archetype. And of course the enemies are going to be undead themed, but we can still just stun them by punching them. Our bazooka is still useless. This level does have some of my favorite aesthetics and gimmicks in it, though. It also has this really weird purple goop that I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. But if we fall into it, we will take damage, so we need to jump on these claw cans. Actually, very difficult to land on those. This level's best detail is that whenever we see a tombstone, we can examine it and read the inscription. That's just really cute, and I love that. If we step on any of these, we will fall down to the spikes below, unless we check the order in which we need to jump on the platforms. Now, I actually didn't know we could do this the first time I played this level, so I just fell into the spikes. If we step on them all correctly, it opens a path upward for us, but we want to take the lower path instead because there's a secret down here. Most of these tombstones have unique things to say. There's an extra life down here, which is good, because I had to cut out at least a couple of deaths from the Crusher Robot flying segment. And we would have missed that secret area if we went the upper path. There's a zombie dummy, and they seem to be identical to the skeleton dummies to me. The only reason we're coming up here to kill them is so we can look at the tombstones that they're guarding. We don't get anything special for doing that, but they're fun to read. I am willing to admit that this is a reasonably creative level for a few reasons, and it's actually fun to play, but the levels get kind of uncreative again after this one. Anyway, back to the real game. There are 3 paths of spikes here, but it basically railroads you into the middle one, because are you even going to bother with the other 2? It's not like you could make it through there in time. Now there's some... Also, I can't believe they said hell in a kid's game, but now there's some more purple goop with moving platforms. Kind of easy, wish I didn't get hit. And there's a new gimmick for the level. We can use the flamethrower to light up these goblets. And in doing so, we will activate platforms and open doors. There's already more variety than in the first 3 levels, so you might get the impression that this game simply gets better as it goes along. But I really do not care for the next couple of level archetypes. Also, here's a use for the wall run that isn't pressing a button. I know it's amazing, I'm not sure if that ever happens again. These gray platforms vanish, by the way, if we step on them. So let's not do that. I meant brown platforms, but gray is close enough, right? We are punching some stuff up so that way we can grab more orbs. We are getting a little bit low on special attack power. Making our way through this guillotine can actually be a challenge thanks to the weird way the jump arc works, and the guillotine does come down rather fast. Lots of purple goop, and a goblet we need to catch on fire at the end of it. There's also a couple more inscriptions that we haven't read yet down here. And in case we lost the flamethrower power-up, there's another one on this tiny box in the sea of purple. Really not a hard jump to make, all things considered. After we get back up there, we just continue on a relatively normal path for a bit, so I'm gonna skip to when things get slightly more interesting. The only real thing between here and there is a guillotine, and we already saw one of those. Down here we have reached the game's attempt at adding some difficulty to these springs. But I have learned to trigger the super run very quickly, so it didn't pose much of a threat at that point. Still, it's better than nothing. We're gonna want to trigger our super attack again here, which will put us with just 4 super attacks in reserve, which is not a lot. And another clock. This clock comes with some free pendulums attached. But their swing arc is very generous toward us. As long as we jump before we move the control stick, we'll be fine. And we even got another extra life for doing it. If this area looks a bit familiar, it's because we just saw one of these earlier in the level. This time we are going to take the upper path that is provided for us, but we're going to have to end up going down to the lower path anyway, because you might notice we don't have our flamethrower ammo, and we kinda need that. I really like the addition of clocks to any levels that deal with cemeteries or the dead, because time is really the ultimate enemy, isn't it? Past this moving platform, we will come across an impassable gap, and that's what we need our flamethrower for. So as I said, it is necessary that we come down here. And in doing so, we're introduced to a new enemy type, the bats. While it is possible to stun-lock these guys with our punches, that's not ideal. I accidentally pressed the home button, but that's okay, that happens sometimes. If you find yourself wondering why in this section I stopped to read the tombstones instead of just leaving, it's because I mistakenly thought that there was another secret area down here. Which there isn't, but there is a full health refill at the end of this corridor, so we didn't really lose much. Now let's just hop our way back up to where we were. Our reward is more pendulums with very generous and easy swing arcs. We're going to be doing a lot of punching for the next couple of minutes or so. Either because there are a lot of enemies, or because there are a lot of boxes we want to break open. But first, here's another hazard that may look familiar, except this time it leads us up to a secret area. With another extra life. We're really raking in the extra lives. But I can still guarantee that we're not going to break 20 by the end. I do think it's kind of neat that there are some repeating design elements and repeating hazards in this level. But, I mean, it's not Chameleon Twist here, so it's good that they don't overdo it. Here's another area where we will be forced to fight enemies, but instead of use our super attack this time, we're going to use our good old fists. And we do take a hit here, but to my credit, we almost don't. Almost. Plus, we do really want to conserve those super attacks. But no matter how many we save, it's not going to be enough for every conflict in the final level. Which is a shame, but at least you'll actually get to see me use the bazooka for combat a few times by that point. We've lost our flamethrower again, but this time we don't need to go anywhere special to get it. It's just in between these two guillotines. And we need to catch 2 goblets on fire in order to turn off the gate at the end of this pathway. Really nothing special in this area. I will admit that I forgot how long it takes to get to the second portion of this level. I recall reaching there by this point, but I suppose not. The game offers us a small jump right here to get some more orbs, just a couple. It seems weird to put something that minor in, but we're gonna take it anyway because we want as many orbs as we can get. And it's not like we lose anything for doing it either, so... This game really should have had an animated tie-in so I had more to talk about when things weren't happening. Because there's not much left to talk about in the world of Sid the Dummy. I suppose I haven't mentioned yet the experiment. But really, I'm sure if you haven't guessed what it is already, that you don't need me to talk about it. I appreciate the layout of this upcoming part of the level conceptually. We need to head over to the right to open a gate so that way we can catch a goblet on fire that's inside the gate, and then come back here right after we've done that so we can go to the underground section of the level. We also have to take a different route back than we took on our way here. And this separate route also acts as a shortcut. It isn't a whole lot, but it's a pretty decent attempt at creative level design. And there's actually an extra life right here that I would have missed if I didn't stop for a second to think. There is one part of the fence with a hole in it, and right down here is the secret.
You found a secret area.
As I said, we're just raking up these extra lives, and we do need these orbs as well. I feel the need to mention that after looking up more about the reboot, it just seems to be most of this game but in 2D instead. A lot of the same design elements are there, and it looks like all of the world types are exactly the same. They've even recycled the music and a lot of the enemy types, which seems like a shame. It seems you could have done so much more, but they chose to rework what they already had. Now, I do understand, of course, that the new art style may appeal to people more, but the graphics are also actually worse than the ones in this game in some places. We're actually going to use our flamethrower for fighting here. I know I said we wouldn't, but it's a lot easier than using another super attack, because we don't want to waste those. The flamethrower is good for groups of enemies, but it runs itself out rather quickly. When we get down to just one, we're going to go back to using our fists, because we want to conserve our flamethrower ammo too. At least I think we do, but there might be another one right here. And by right here, I mean at the end of this hallway. This hallway's a bit weird. The foreground is the obvious choice because there's so much in the background that is just unavoidable death. So why would you even go back there? It would be a lot harder to aim diagonally if we weren't playing the Wii version, which thankfully we are. I've given it some extra consideration, and I have decided that the Wii version is the best version to play simply because of the final boss, and how frustrating it would be if you couldn't aim a cursor to choose where you were shooting. There's a couple of decent timer-based platforming challenges up here. We have to run to the end of the hall, activate a button with our wall run, and then quickly make it back to the opposite end and climb up these steps. Of course, the wall run almost landed us on those spikes. But that's a good timer, because if you were hesitant, then you actually wouldn't have been able to make it in time and you'd have to do it again. So I like that one. It's simple, and using the spikes as a means to invoke hesitation was a good idea. They didn't overdo it, it was just a one set of spikes, but it works. But now this goblet down here is free for us to shoot with our fire, and for some reason I come over here to get more fire ammo, even though we already have some. I'm not sure why, maybe I just didn't realize it at the time. Down that hole is another timer challenge, and this one's difficult not because of any hesitation, but because the spikes are right in front of where we need to wall run. But it's still doable. The timer also seems more strict this time, so we really need to book it. You might not be able to make it if you didn't hop your way across the hallway or super run. We're just gonna jump our way past all these ghosties, but if we manage to knock any of the dummies into the ghost pits, they would disappear and die. So that's kinda neat. But it really is just easier to jump diagonally over them in this case. We are nearing the end of the level now. I forgot how long this level was. I still think it's one of the better levels, but perhaps it overstayed its welcome just a bit. It is honestly more fun than I remember using the flamethrower to take out enemies. It's a shame that there isn't more opportunity to do so. We need to super run down this hallway because these platforms fall, and we barely made that. I suppose they retract, they don't really fall, but it works the same in principle, and here's another one. That one we made with a lot more time, but we did unfortunately smash into the wall, which doesn't hurt us. I am glad that for a Catacombs level, this is not nearly as catacomby as it could be. And now we've entered the Death Pit. But since we don't need to actually fight any of these guys, I'm going to jump past them and take some damage in the process. But taking damage to save lives in the long run is a good idea. Do not apply any of these generalized statements to other games or even real life. Do not do that. You can't blame me for anything you do because of what I said in Sid the Dummy. We are pretty much right at the end now, and here's the most difficult jump in the level. We have to time our jump onto this spring with this retracting platform. And if we don't get it right, we have to hop off the spring and try again. In case this seems kind of mean, I would like to mention that it is possible to move the camera while we're stationary, so it's not as mean as it may seem. But that's finally it for this level, and I'll see you guys next time.